All right, hello, I'm Bill Patton with USA Tennis Coach, and I'm happy to have Mike Spino on the show. And Mike is somebody who goes way back to the origins of sports psychology and the mind-body exercise, especially as it relates to the field of running and distance running. So anyway, Mike, can you tell us a little bit about your background, introduce yourself a little bit further for us?
Sure. Thank you. And Bill, thanks for doing this. It's really kind of fun. I got to be a really good runner in high school and won a scholarship to Syracuse University. And one of the first things I wrote was something called Running as a Spiritual Experience. And it's been published about 25 times. And it just came out of me 3 or 4 years after I had this run, but I was able to describe myself kind of running out of myself and finding a new identity and sort of sitting on the side of the road, kind of crying, trying to deal with my own identity. And I always kind of carried that with me. And I wrote that in 1971, and it's been republished many times, recently by my sponsor, District Vision, which is a sport and sunglass company in New York City that I've really connected with. And I moved out to California to train with Mihai Igloy, the great Hungarian coach, and try to make the Olympics in '68. And I didn't make the team, but what did occur is that I met Herbert Cole at first, who was the person that wrote the Open Classroom and 36 Children. And then afterwards, David Megacy introduced me to Michael Murphy. And that started a whole situation with the Esalan Institute and then the Esalan Sports Center. And beginning in the 1970s, we really hit our stride. I started coaching Michael, and we started putting together mind-body kind of things because, he's high-level meditation person. So just running with him and a lot of things coming together between us, we started to discover things. And, meditation is thousands of years old. So we discovered things, and Michael was a very high-level meditator, and I got him to be a sort of world-class middle-distance runner, which which it added to what we were doing because we started to do it at a very high level.
Awesome. So now a little bit about your formal education, because I see you have PhD next to your name. So
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your master's studies and your doctorate level studies and how that plays out in your coaching and in your background.
Yes. Well, I was always interested in the mental training. And I guess one of the things is, even when I was like at Esalan, we had, I taught a lot of classes, and the classes were at a pretty high level and in big resorts. But still, it hung with me the sense that I really didn't know what I was doing from an intellectual point of view. So one of the things I wanted to do, I wanted to study the mind-body experience. And I was influenced by a Swedish psychologist called Lars Erik Unestål, who was the first sports psychologist at the Olympic Games in the 60s. And the exciting thing about Lars Erik is he said, physical and mental training have to be done at the same time in sequence with each other. And he's such an inspiration. He's over 90 now, and still teaching coaches how to put together mental training. 100 books he's written. Wow. So I was very involved with Kenya. So adherence is a problem in the United States, like getting kids to really do a project and not get distracted. And so I did my program on mental training with 75 students at Kenyatta University in Kenya. And I had a wonderful mentor, Bill Straub, who was at Syracuse, was a teacher at Syracuse when I was a student there. And the exciting thing is that when I had the research I did in Kenya, I then transferred to a very high level research university in France, just north of Paris, called Lille 2 University. And because I had been working with the United Nations in sports for development and peace, and I was introduced to the very, very highest level research people who were just kind of almost at the end of their career, and had a colleague at Princeton, David Moreau, that I worked with in finding the places in the brain where different impulses came from. And I realized that in the research and meta-analysis that physical fitness, physical activity, and mental training are the hardest connection to put together mentally, not the easiest, the most difficult. And so I realized that a lot of research had to be done to do it correctly. And, studied about 300 studies over 2 years, and took the research from the 75 students in Kenya, presented in France, and I had good friends in different countries. My friend in the Netherlands, Kees Verwoen, people came in from Greece. There were experts in Paris, and I got highest level in my doctorate, in the top 10%.
Awesome,
and,
awesome.
And I discovered a lot of things, even about myself, that the voila experience takes a lot of time and a lot of data restruction, fitting into different paradigms and different probability scales, and started to realize, yes, this is really something, but it's not an easy fix. It's not like you meet somebody and you change their lives forever. Maybe you do, because I believe in grace, and I never had any formal mental training when I had that experience that I ran in. But I realized that this work is it's real. It takes time. It takes analysis, and it takes insight.
Right. And it must have been difficult at first to, be right there at the very beginning, the birth of something, and to go through the stages of truth, where
yes.
At first it's, ridiculed, right? And then second, then it's debated vigorously. And then finally it's accepted as truth with no memory of the first two. But,
yes,
but now I wanted to get into my experience of meeting you and Greg Warburton and Michael Murphy, right?
Right.
So and you could kind of fill in because I saw it my way, and then you had your intention of what you were trying to do. But
right.
I remember we spent that 90 minutes on the field where we went through some guided imagery, and then we would get up and do some exercises, and a lot of it was very slow, methodical, paying attention to how you feel in every step of what you do. It's kind of like it reminded me of the use of the self by the Alexander technique. And
yes.
We would go through and we'd do some exercises, and then we'd come back and visualize a little bit more, and then we do a few more little exercises. And some of them were pretty strange, the rubbing of the palms together and then putting the energy on the other person.
Right.
So it took me a little bit out of my comfort zone, but then by the end of it, I was running pretty well. And, I have an arthritic back and bad knees. I don't have a lot of cartilage in either knee. And one thing that I was touched. I had an emotional moment when Greg Warburton, at the end of all that, we were chit-chatting, and he just said to me, "You were running pretty freely out there."
Mm.
And it hit me hard because it's been a long time since I've felt any freedom to run, really, without pain. So you want to dig a little bit deeper into that experience, and how common is that with people that you're working with?
Well, that was a great experience for me, that session, because we had planned on doing a session that Michael and I kind of perfected, where you sit and then you walk and then you run. But what I was discovering right away at the beginning is that the people in that group were much more into being able to do techniques, breathing techniques, visualization techniques, energetic techniques, and that even some people that look pretty old, they were really fit. I mean, a group of people that age, I usually have to go really slow. So as Michael pointed out, talking to me afterwards, I started to just improvise because, all the things that I do, all the techniques, people were picking it up really quickly. And so it ended up to be a really good experience. We chanted, we did fresh swing, we did guided imagery, we did active visualization, we did standing. And at the end, I remember the thing most vivid to me is we were kind of running and kind of making sounds like tribal sounds, and people were breaking off, and I was giving them workouts, and it was as good as work we had done during the height of the the Esalan Sports Center, because we started at Esalan Sports Center. We started to do a lot of workshops, and what would happen is people would come from big resorts to Esalan and take my workshops. So Michael and I kind of we did workshops at the Princess Hotel and in the Bahamas, and we worked with Mark McCormick, the person that started IMG, and it was really a blast. And I think one of the things that was incredible was George Leonard. We don't have him with us anymore, and George was just an incredible person. He was such a teacher to me, and that's when we brought Percy Cerutty to the United States, the greatest running coach in the world, and his entourage of people came, and they had touched on really high things, and George was bringing things out of people because he's a great interviewer. And the introduction to my book, Running Home, which was my second book, George explains, well, I was really a good runner in those days, and how I would just run away. It wasn't the Olympics, but I'd just run away from people, and his observation of what was occurring in that situation.
Okay, so now let's go back to the kind of the beginning of kind of the mind body sports psychology stuff. What were some of the kind of the watershed moments of working with athletes where you had these breakthroughs? You went through a rapid fire thing about running free, fresh this. I missed most of it, but
okay.
Kind of take us chronologically through some of the breakthroughs that you came up with in running.
Well, the thing was, we had a 6-month program where we met twice a week, and we brought people in like George and Michael and Al Wong and Bob Nadeau and people like that added components to what we were doing. And that group we're still friends. It's 50 years ago we did this, 45. Bruce Nelson, who's become, my best friend over long periods of time. And everything we discovered and everything that was validated through Mike, we started to experiment with. And then, Tim Galloway came around. And then just these high discussions. George was great at high discussions. He would just lead stuff and say, no negatives. We just go, and you'd start thinking and talking and conceptualizing things that you didn't even know were in your mind.
So Tim Galloway was involved
Tim Galloway was involved with the Esalan Sports Center right from the beginning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We did a conference in 1973. That was a breakthrough conference at Skyline College. And, 400 or 500 people came. Al Wong was there. Tim Galloway was there. Psychologists from Canada were there. And it was just like, oh, yeah, we're discovering each other. And we were, the New York Times said it was a breakthrough revolution of what sport could be. George gave us incredible keynote speech. And from there, it just kind of like took off. We did 5 or 6 conferences. Probably the one that was the most potent was we did a conference with professional track at University of Oregon. And we had all the pro athletes, Jim Ryan, and those are the pictures in my book, Beyond Jogging. It was amazing. We had a track meet then we had the conference on Thursday and Friday, Saturday, and then we had the international track meet. There was pro track for about 3 or 4 years. And we got really close with Ben Gipjo and Lee Evans. And, it was just all this magical things happening.
All right, let's shift gears here a little bit and get into, hold on, let me shift this view a little bit. All right, so let's get into the kind of the Omni Athlete thing. Well, let's talk about SEC Group and Omni Athletes and how, what is an Omni Athlete and how do coaches become coaches of Omni Athletes?
Well, I mean, the SEC Group started with David Megacy and Rick Leskowitz, and I was one of the first members that came on. And for about the first 2 years, it was just discussion. And, Josh Christ has come on as a sort of person that's, knows all the technology and sort of the Omni Athlete is just a word that talks about people becoming more than just the old-time coach, and there's more of these coaches there now. It's the realization, really, that as a coach, you only, and this is, I think, what your work is kind of about, you only really get the deep satisfaction. You only get the really deep satisfaction from connecting with the kids personally. And I always say if there's an opportunity or a problem, if you try to solve it from a mind-body perspective, then you are an Omni Athlete, or you are the person that brings the possibilities of sport to the surface. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to say, yes, you're the coach, doesn't matter what the bottom line, your won-loss kind of record. And we're talking about this last weekend with Alabama, what a great coach Nick Saban is. You just watch him on the sidelines, you can tell that he's caring, sort of wants to win. He's, competitive, the best team in the country, but he cares a lot about the players. And as you know, they've had 2 quarterbacks this season. And the second quarterback started, and then Tuga came in, the one that was maybe the Heisman Trophy winner. But after the game, there was no animosity. It was, let's make the team win. Mm-hmm. Hurst, the quarterback that came in at the end, he had no animosity towards the first person. They were all just, and he was close to Nick Saban. And Nick Saban said really good things about him, even though he was sidelined to the second tier. So, if there's like, for instance, in track and field, if I have a person that's having problems visualizing the dying at the end of a race, or having a bad body image, or wanting to get them to get more volume in their training, I break up the training with mental exercises like we did from different perspective of what the person is. And that's kind of the essence of what the Omni Athlete or the mind-body athlete or the athlete-centered coach is about.
Could we back up for a second?
Yes.
Because I'm thinking that your point about the Alabama story was that Saban had done a really good job of making team, and that
yes.
everyone saw that team was more important than their own individual outcomes or
yes.
or glory or whatnot. Was that the point of that?
Well, I don't think you can fake what happened after the game. With the first-string quarterback then was replaced, and then he came back and won the game for them, and there was harmony and there was love between and care, and that's the real basis of a team pulling together. And with that, you have marvelous experiences. And if you're just internally fighting and everyone's just competing against each other and the coaches punishes people. You know, the old-time coach is supposed to have a whistle, punish people. You know, you do wrong, you got to run laps around the track, or
Right.
you know, something demeaning. And I think coaches, the Omni Athlete, the Omni Coach, know in what you're doing research on that that's not the bottom line that brings the deeper satisfaction.
Got it. Okay, so now let's get into some practical stuff. And you know, to you and I, it might seem really practical, but to a lot of people, it might seem, you know, a little out there, a little woo-woo. You know, there's still some mystique behind some of these unconventional techniques. So, you know, what are some conventional techniques that are really valid? What are some things that are a little bit different outside of what might be normal for a lot of coaches? What are some practical things to help in coaching kind of moment to moment?
Yeah, well, that's a wonderful question.
Thank you.
My partner is a company called District Vision in New York City. They make athletic running sunglasses, but they do a lot more than that. And for instance, last month I went up, they republished my first book, which was such a wonderful thing to see after 50 years for the book to come out again with their introduction. It's two European guys in their 30s that are just marvelous, incredible people. And were in the fashion world for a long time, doing really great, but felt there wasn't something there that really gathered them. So if you look on districtvision.com Instagram, there's a picture of me doing breathing exercises and visualizations with the top coaches in New York City. And they're committed to, if you do mental training and you do these different things, you'll have a better experience. I'm telling you. So they're just open to this whole experience. And they contacted me. They read my book and they said, nobody's done better than your book that you wrote 50 years ago.
Okay. So we're kind of running out of time here. And
okay, I'm sorry.
What I'm trying to dig out of you here are a couple of really practical do this action items for coaches.
Yes.
So
I mean, there's two different things.
Okay.
There's visual meditation and visualization, guided imagery that you do outside of the movement that you integrate into the running and stuff. Then there's things you do inside the running, breathing and active visualization and things that you also do. And the quest is to blend those together. And there's physical act, like in running, if you do short intervals and sets, you can hold an image in your mind and then wipe it away and then go to the next one. So there's physical techniques, there's sequences that you should do to try to get to a peak. And then there's a sequence, I call it periodic sequencing technique, how you add from meditation to event rehearsal and the things in the middle. So what I'm practical for people is start to meditate. I just finished a research project with 50 kids, and I do this thing instead at the end of running, instead of stretching again, we do progressive relaxation of breathing and relaxing, seeing colors. And then when you get really relaxed, just start building on it. How do I look? How do I feel when I'm really something?
Got it. Now, the one that had a dramatic effect for me for weeks was the concept of feeling as though a hand is behind you.
Yeah. That's the active visualization. I do push and pull, and the hand pushing you, like you begin a race, and then you get a down feeling because you go through, you go through up and down, positive, negative. And sometimes it can make your eyes soft if you've practiced it, and a hand can come down and sort of take you to the next pole or something. And then you can go through a cycle so what Lars Erik Unistol taught me is everything has a sequence, and it's different when you're training. If you have like a 16-week period, you do certain mental training in the cycles that you do the physical training. So you're trying to peak at the end. And my research on my PhD was on event rehearsal and distraction and different things like that, that are a whole body of work.
Okay. And now, running is such one of the pure athletic, activities. I mean, probably running and boxing are probably maybe among the most purest sports, right? And,
yes.
Not everybody needs to box, but just about every athlete needs to run. So what are some things about running that will help a tennis player, a basketball player, football, soccer?
Well, what I try to do is I have the big on my website, and I have a new website coming out, is improving in the 1 mile run. If you're a tennis player or a soccer player or if you can improve in the 1 mile run, it'll improve everything and if you do it from a mind-body approach, you can do the mental kind of things at the same time. We go out to the park. We have all these bicycles and all these things that show us how to do interval training and different stuff. You go to the park, you look around, everybody's just running at one pace. So the kids in my research project say, I'm there and I'm doing, coach, I'm doing stuff that's different than everybody else. People are looking at me. I'm doing intervals. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. So I would say, I wrote a book called Breakthrough Maximum Sports Training, who had all the visualizations for tennis, for golf, for skiing. But I think combining those kind of visualizations for your sport and getting in much, much better shape by improving over 12 weeks in the mile run, and always integrating the mental in it. I mean, I think it can be an incredible experience.
Okay, so let me okay, I've always heard that you need to have 12 minutes of aerobic activity in order to establish an aerobic base.
No,
so
that's the complete wrong way.
Would it be better to be okay, go ahead.
You should, if you do 12 minutes, you have to break it up into different segments and different things like this. And I had the kids in this research class do very copious notes on everything they felt. So in other words, here's a guy who's running, if you run 20 minutes, 4 days a week, you don't get in very good shape. In fact, you probably get in worse shape. That's Mayo Clinic says that. Total Fitness even said that. But if you take something and it's like a more advanced class, I do so many of these, so many of those, so many of this, mixing up the aerobic and anaerobic ratios at the same time, and your shape starts to come up in a way that just jogging 12 minutes doesn't do it. So if you take one person that does 20 minutes, 4 times a week, and I give a person I can even send it to you if you'll do it, or even if you don't do it.
Well, and so is that kind of like the muscle confusion theory?
It's working the way the body wants to work. I mean, it's utilizing the heart. If the heartbeat goes up and then goes down, goes up and then goes down over a period of time, the heart gets in better shape than just going in one beat like this. My coach, Percy Cerity, he'd see somebody just going along, he'd stand there and scream, "You hopeless bastard!" He was very. when he was at Esalan, when I was bringing him around, I was only 30 years old, and I was having to tell him, "Look, I know when he starts, you're going to want to get up and run out, but don't, because you'll never have another experience like that." And
got it.
He brought out the greatness in people.
Okay, so this is going to cut off any second now, and so now. To kind of wrap this up, I mean, we as coaches enter the lives of our players somewhere along their timeline.
Yes.
We want to, help them become better people. So what are some of the, if you had to wrap it up and say, here are 3 principles to, not killing the patient and then also to help them become better.
I think an athlete's surprised, and probably Nick Saban does. I have a feeling about it. If you ask them about their real self, rather than can you go, can you run these quarters, it's just asking them, what's going on with them, what's inside of them, what do they care about, why do they feel good, why do they feel bad, and then if you can be pinpointed to say what to do. The great thing of John Wooden, the great basketball coach, he said, what we're really talking about is don't just tell somebody relax. What does that mean? But to pinpoint and say, do this or do that, or if something negative is happening to you, flush it out. Just flush it and go to the next thing. Teach kids how to go into a game like it's a transition from one moment to the next moment, and to be present. If you can do with this meditation, make kids present so that they know, oh, I know where I was off. Barry Robbins is good at this. Just come center, just come back to yourself. David Megacy's good at this. Just come back and say, this is, I'm here, because your mind just starts to go crazy. So if you're a coach and you can give people these access to their own personality and human performance, and you can point out when they're struggling, that you say the right thing and you say it with the right intent 3 or 4 times, the athlete gets to trust you and you get to imbue your wisdom to them.
That's great. One thing that I would do with my athletes is I often ask them, what time is it? And they know that the answer is now.
I like that. It's beautiful.
And because we only get our work done in the present. And the SEC group festival that we had this June was just really amazing and very a transformative experience for me. I left just, really trying to be mindful about being fully present moment to moment. And I was really blown away by how Barry started the whole thing with us just all sitting quietly together, being together, and it worked. I mean, we really were as a group together in community there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, George Leonard was incredible at things like that. Like, he could bring people together in a group of people wanting to be the best they can be. There was no one like him. There's such a great loss. George left.
So people should look into George Leonard then, right? He has
a book called The Ultimate Athlete, and the introduction to my book, Running Home. He really understood sport because he was a great musician and he was a great writer. And when we'd come together and talk, he was so elegant that it was like, how could someone be able to sentence after sentence just, and just bring us to our higher self, and Michael, of course, Michael does the same thing. I mean, they're
right. And Michael's book is Golf in the Kingdom, which is quite well known.
Right.
So, anyway, let's put a wrap on it. If you had to give one final, what would you say are the top 2 or 3 takeaways from this talk here?
I would say if you're a runner, don't just run around the block. Think about intervals and doing things in segments and building up things. I would say and if you're a coach, win. Have passion for winning. Really try to do everything you can, recruit and work with your athletes, but have a softer side to yourself so they can see the kids growing. Because when you see them again in 5, 6, 7 years, as coaches we all do, they don't remember the hard work out of something like that. They remembered when you really cared about them, and they went through it sometimes, and you were there for them, as their sort of older person. And I would say be open. Don't get locked into old thoughts. Experiment with things and keep on asking people, did that work? Did that work? So that that you're building a basis. I mean, this group that I just finished today, actually, 45 kids. When I got back there, they were really influenced by things that I didn't think were the main part of what I teach, especially progressive relaxation and things like that. They all said, yeah, that was something, because at the end, everybody wants to go home or it's over. Okay, it's at the end. How did you feel? Get your body back to basics. And I'd like to share that exercise with as many people as I can, because it is, and then at the end, when you really relax, think about who you want to be. Which
Well,
one?
you're going to have to send that to me, and I'll make it available in the show notes. And when I say show notes, that means it's going to be available on YouTube. So anybody who's interested in that should contact me, and I'll let you know when it's live.
Okay, that'd be great, Bill.
All right. Hey, Michael, our time is up, but I really appreciate it. And this conversation took on a life of its own. I really enjoyed getting to know you better, and glad that you spent some time with people that have been following my stuff. So thank you for that.
Yes. Thank you so much, Bill. I really appreciate you doing this.
All right. Take care.
Take care.